want to convene the regular meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard for February 19th. We know the meeting has been properly warned because we were here at 5:30 for executive session. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the February 5th meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 5th meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 3-0. You'll note that we have 2 less people this evening. First up, chair's remarks. I have 2 orders of business. One is I want to thank all the volunteers that made the Harris Hill ski jump such a success. I think a lot of people don't know that it's an all-volunteer organization, and they spend about, from one ski jump to the other making it happen. There were thousands of people that came. I think one of the organizers told me 3,500 or whatever both days, so it was really well attended. We have information that the restaurants were just hopping on Friday and Saturday night, so we have a lot as a town to thank the Harris Hill Ski Jump organizers for making that a great event and flashing a spotlight on our town. So I want to make sure they all know we appreciate that. Second order of business is from the town clerk. We want to remind everybody that early voting for town meeting day has begun. You can go down to the town clerk's office during business hours. You can take a ballot home, or you can request that one be mailed to you. So all you have to do is contact the town clerk's office to get the information on having one mailed to you. And as a reminder, we want to remind everybody that town meeting election day is March 5th. And the polls will be at the American Legion right down the way on Linden Street from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I'm sure we'll have another reminder at our next meeting. So that's all I have. Does town manager have anything?
I do not. Thank you.
Nothing. Do any of my fellow select board members have any comments or committee reports?
I had a couple of comments. Last week, our town manager and I, went up to Montpelier to do some, I won't call it testimony, but it was really sort of a discussion with the Vermont Senate about VLCT's initiative and our own initiative to start a pilot program where we try to get some cities and towns interested in limited self-governance. And I won't go into the details of that. You've heard a little bit about it before, but it was a very positive meeting with our senators on the Government Operations Committee, joint committee, and it was a great visit. And Peter is going back tomorrow, correct? For actual testimony.
Yes.
Correct? So I just wanted to let you guys know of that, and also to remind everybody that the Winter Carnival is going on. My family and I were able to attend Sugar on Snow. We didn't get to go to the ski jump, but the Sugar on Snow and the pancake breakfast were both great. But it goes on through next weekend, so check it out. There's very cheap movies at the Latches. There's all kinds of great family events to attend. So.
And you can go on brattleboro.org and find the entire schedule.
Exactly.
Shanta.
I have no
Nothing.
updates. No.
Okay, now it's the time in the meeting for public participation, and this is when members of the public can get up and make a comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So is there anyone here tonight that would like to talk about something not on tonight's agenda? Seeing nothing, we will move on to liquor commissioners. Would anyone like to make a motion to convene as liquor commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Is Cassandra here?
Yes, in the back.
Oh, I didn't see her. Okay, first up is we're going to have a presentation, for lack of a better word, from Cassandra Holloway from Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition on the alcohol and tobacco compliance checks. So I don't know if you want to come and sit down. You want to give a brief, like what your organization is so the people in the viewing audience.
have my notes on my phone, so I'm not like on social media as I do this. I'm Cassandra Holloway. I am the director of the Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition, and we work on addressing substance abuse in Brattleboro as well as the surrounding towns, Putney, Guilford, Vernon, and Dummerston. And we have been working pretty closely with the Brattleboro Select Board for years on just kind of supporting them as their roles as liquor licensees, liquor commissioner, and also the licensees in our community. So, yeah, and so I'm just kind of giving an update, which we do twice a year. So I wasn't here last time, unfortunately, because I was at a conference. So I don't know if there's anything that came up during I know I gave the report. There was 18 people who got DLC liquor compliance checks and one failed. And then there were 19 that were for tobacco compliance checks and none failed. So that was good news. So I don't know if there's anything that I can help you with on that. I wasn't here, so good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
We also have the responsible retailer program that we started. We did it as a pilot multiple years ago, and then we started it again 3 years ago. And we had 30 responsible retailers on that signed up to be part of this voluntary program. And over the past year or so, we've lost 9 just because they are no longer in business. And one of them chose to pull out of the program when we finally did our mystery shops, which we were really excited to do. We did 17 mystery shops, and out of that 5 failed. So this is somebody who's between the ages of 21 and 25 who did or looks that age. The person was actually 27. And they just didn't card her when they were doing, when she asked for alcohol. So for those 5 who failed, what we'll be doing is mailing them a self-assessment tool, which you already have on your website, and offering them free consult with Steve Waldo, who works in partnership with us, who is a former DLC educator for 30 years. We also have another DLC training that we're hosting on March 19th and the 26th. And then we're doing a staff enhancement training that is our program, and that's free. So when people now do the DLC trainings, it's $25 for each person who attends. So then the percentage of people have gone down significantly. What I'll tell you is we used to fill a room, and now we have, one of them we had 4 people, and the other one we had 10. So just kind of telling, and a lot of times those are owners and managers, which means that when they go back to the workplace, then they're generally training their staff, or the staff are doing it online. So there's not that 3-hour training that they used to receive. So we bring it down to 2 for the staff enhancement trainings, and we really focus it on the staff. So we do a lot of refusal skill education and do more of a, it's more informal, and they can ask a lot of questions. So we're really excited to offer that. And that's done with Steve Waldo as well. And we hope to do, we plan to do another mystery shop in the spring. And we also will be working with David Heiler at the Whetstone Brewery to host a owner-manager dialogue with Steve Waldo to kind of talk about the challenges around compliance and just all the laws. And so we're excited to be offering that in the spring as well. Also, Steve Waldo created a refusal skills workbook. We'll be giving that to the participants. And also Anita Grant, who was very active. She owned the 2 mobile stations. She owned the one that used to be next to Dunkin' Donuts, and she also owned the one at Rotary, which is now closing, or has closed already. But I want to just give her a shout out because she's been very actively involved with the Responsible Retailer Program, along with David Heiler, and really helping us to make sure that we're making it serve the people that are selling and serving alcohol. And one of the things she has created is a contract between her employees and herself, and they have to fill in like when people can buy alcohol, when they have to stop selling it, as well as ages. And then they sign and just say, I commit to doing what I need to do to make sure that I'm not selling or serving. So that's something else we'll be offering to the participants. I think that's pretty much it. I also just want to say that the collaborative up in Londonderry is working with a town in Bennington. I don't want to say who yet, but they're very excited about what you all are doing. So we have given them the link to the permit or the licensing page with all of the information. And I guess one of my questions to you is if somebody wants to talk to you, because we're also going to be doing a lot of this with other Windham County towns, to encourage them to do what you all do. Who would be a good person for them to reach out to? Because I don't know if it should be Hillary or Peter or
person would be
Jane.
Hillary or me.
Dan?
Hillary or Peter?
Okay, great. So hopefully we'll get some calls.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions on this piece at all?
I do.
Okay, sure.
When you say responsible retailer program, what does that mean?
Okay, so it was a program where people that are selling or serving alcohol in Brattleboro or businesses can sign up for it. And what it offers is we give them resources. We give them this free staff enhancement training, and we also do mystery shops where people between over the age of 21 will come and ask for, so it's just a way for them to do compliance checks for their staff without any, any consequences really. So that's really the gist of it. The last thing I wanted to say is that I have the table. Is, as you probably know, Keene just made tobacco sales 21, and Greenfield had done that earlier. So I noticed, there was an article, there's a vape shop that's moving to Hinsdale. It's got pool tables and big screen TVs and video games. And we already have 2 vape shops that are selling here. We don't have a lounge. Well, the one up on Putney has a lounge, but I don't think it's really actively being used with younger folk. But as you probably have been reading in the news, it's becoming an epidemic, the use of vaping in high school as well as in the college age. So it just might be something, I just want to put that out there, that we'd be happy to talk with you about. And as marijuana is likely to become commercialized, I don't know if you know, but there was a subcommittee that provided a report, and it's going to be pretty much like the alcohol is right now. So this will be coming to you. If it becomes a commercialized substance, then what you were doing right now could also be for marijuana. That also, it looks like it's recommended by the subcommittee if the town wants to not have it in their town, or if they want to do things like taxes. But they also, I just want to put out there that it says that another important consideration is to ensure that any implementation deadlines take into account the statutory timing that towns need to follow to enact local decisions. So I will keep my eyes and ears open for that. But if you want to start to be preemptive, now might be the time. So. And what you want to do as a town. And maybe that's when the new elections happen, but I just want to say it because I'm not always here. So.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, just a comment, just to say that the vaping issue is on my radar a lot. I've been trying to talk to people when I can, just to get a sense of the community's attitude towards it. And there's quite a few people that have that share my concerns about young people vaping and the marketing to young people. So it's definitely on our radar, I think, as is the cannabis legislation that's about to come down. The interesting thing on the vaping is that I'm also watching it go through in Montpelier. Aren't they talking about doing some legislation up there for vaping? I guess that's a question.
Yeah, well,
You know,
they're looking at doing the tobacco age of 21, and they're also looking at online sales as one of their areas around vaping products, because right now people can just buy them. That's something we're actively doing actually at BAPC. Rolf Parker, who works with me, has been snapshotting eBay. Basically, you can just buy it, free shipping. So that means anybody can. And it's being sold in the schools. People are, it's all anecdotal at this point, but there's school staff throughout Vermont that are talking about, and kids that are talking about how students are selling them in the schools, as well as some are selling the whole product, not just the pods that go in, for $100. And these kids are these pods have a whole pack of a pack of cigarettes and the amount of nicotine, and you can actually get them boosted with more nicotine. So these kids don't realize how much nicotine they're taking in because they can be doing it in class. So it's a constant thing. And so I do this because a lot of them are putting them in their sleeves, sorry. So it's, I think the 21 is really gonna help in getting it from out of the schools, because anybody who's 18 now can just buy it, bring it to the school. But there's also the online component. So that's something that we're trying to get to the decision makers as well, including the Attorney General in Massachusetts, who's actively looking at that.
And so as far as I understand, the 21, there's a move to raise the tobacco age to 21, and that would scoop up vaping in it.
Yes.
Otherwise, there's no real way to say, vaping's 21 and everything else.
No, it'd just be tobacco products.
Yeah.
But as you know, that one's one of those tricky ones. You all don't have a lot of control over who can get those licenses here in town. So it'd be really, I think, helpful for municipalities to not have to figure out how to work around the dilemma.
Right.
So, cool. Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are you open to public comment?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Hi, so listening to you speak, I hear a lot of stigma reinforcing language as an epidemic and crisis, and there needs to be a very specific differentiation understood that marijuana is also a medicinal plant. Hemp products are more sustainable than a lot of other materials that are being used, and controlling the age of when people can consume is not a culture that is positively reinforcing people's independent moderation and autonomy of self, their own liberation to moderate their own anatomy and their reactions to anatomy that they are entitled to by birth. And so, like, when I hear people talking about vaping and trying to combine that in with smoking, there is a difference. There is no flame going into the vape. And where do we draw the line? Are you also going to put an age limit on people using this as an enema too? Or is that too taboo still? Because it really shouldn't be, absolutely at all, when that's a very effective way to use any substance, well, not any substance, but a lot of substances. So I really encourage decriminalization so that people can socialize with this without jumping through hoops and into, like, Harmony's Lounge was shut down by the Liquor and Tobacco Commissions, and that was a very sad event that, you know, I enjoyed going to that club to socialize with like-minded people. We aren't harming anyone, and I'm tired of this discussion.
Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, we might have a couple more.
Hi, Franz Reichsman. I'm not tired of this discussion. I think it's a very important discussion, and I think limitations on vaping for young people is extremely important. Nicotine is a very dangerous substance, has consequences throughout the life cycle, and there's other chemicals in the concoctions that people vape that we don't know the significance of at this point. So I'd like to thank you for your efforts in this, and recommend that the Select Board keep on top of this issue as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Gershon Moore, I'll be quick. I happen to know quite a bit about the vaping culture in this town. I actually do some hours at one of the local stores. Vaping is an issue. I have a kid in high school, and some of his friends have actually gotten in trouble for vaping in school, whether it be nicotine or marijuana. I also happen to know there's a bunch of stores in town that will not carry the e-cigarettes because they think they're a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea. Don't get me wrong, I vape myself, but I don't vape nicotine. I'll just put that out there. I think it's dangerous, and I do know that sometimes these things do have a tendency to blow up. At least the older ones did. I find it kind of dangerous because they make e-cigarettes that have flavors that don't have nicotine in them, and if my kid got one, I'd be pretty upset about it. Granted, like, the smoking age is 18, for using marijuana is 21. I don't want my kid to do it. I don't want any young people to do it. However, the regulation is something that does need to be spoken about because we're a pretty liberal place. I have a lot of ideas and information about it. If anyone would ever like to talk, feel free to talk.
Great, thank you. Any last comments? Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Next up in our role as liquor commissioners is our annual review of liquor licenses. And several years ago, what we do now is do them all at once, but they're conditional with everybody putting in their paperwork.
Correct.
And Peter's going to give us an update on some of the things or flags and things for us.
Absolutely. So there are 65 total licenses that are up for renewal. Those are all inclusive of the stores that sell, the clubs that have just occasional activities, and the restaurants and bars that are more, daily functioning under the license. And the way the renewal process works is we look at everybody who's up for renewal, and the various town departments look within their areas of expertise to make sure, if there's any record of any violations there, if there's any delinquent taxes, or if they're delinquent on any of the loans, the small business loans the town makes. Any of those kinds of things would be a flag. We don't have any of those from the town staff's perspective. We don't have any concerns about the ones that are before you for action tonight. We do have a concern about one, which is McNeil's, because there are some safety issues that town staff is working with McNeil's on. When those have been adequately addressed, then under the liquor-related regulations, we'll be back to ask you to take action on that one particular application. But otherwise, what we have is 64 of the 65 being recommended to you this evening to be conditionally approved. Of those, 61 don't have any compliance issues at all. But there are 3 that I wanted to point out to you before you act on the item, because in recent years, I know the Select Board has made a practice of asking those who have had a violation in the prior year to come in and give information about what happened and what they did to correct it. So I'm not going to speak to any of the ones, any of the vast majority that are in compliance, but there's these few to call out. One is the Brattleboro Country Club had a violation back in June. It was a first offense of selling alcohol to an underage person. They were required by the DLC to do additional training. That's on page 2 of 11 in your materials tonight. On page 3 of 11, there's actually one that is to be removed from your action tonight. The second one down is the business that is going to be replacing Avenue Grocery. They will be in for liquor license approval when they're fully ready to open up, but they're not yet, and so we ask that you don't include that Cooper's Coop on the Avenue at 82 Western Avenue in your action tonight. We ask that you exclude that from your action tonight. And then on page 7 of 11, Ramunto's Brick Oven Pizza, they had an education violation back on March 13th, a year ago, and had their license suspended for 1 day at that time for April 16th. They served a 1-day suspension on April 16th of 2018. With those exceptions, everything before you is completely compliant, and we recommend that you approve, conditioned only upon the submittal of all the required paperwork and the final approval of the Department of Liquor Control.
How do my fellow Select Board members feel about the Country Club and Ramunto's? We have in the past, if someone has a violation, even if they've corrected it, we've asked them to come before us before we issue the license. Do we want to do that with these 2?
Well, I personally feel like a paperwork violation is less of an issue. I don't know how do you feel about it?
I would say the same thing. Yeah, it doesn't feel like.
And you're talking about Ramunto's.
Yes, I am. Yep. How do you feel?
This is, well, I don't want to go back in history, but this is would be their second time they've come before us, because they came before us 2 years ago, I think. It was for
Ramunto's?
selling for a minor, but this is was not what this is.
Okay.
But this is their second time that they have applied in the last 3 years, I guess it would be, that they've had a issue.
Right, but last time was a selling
Yeah. I
violation.
do believe that's what it was, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Country Club
That was for selling to a minor
says,
back in June.
Yeah.
and you said that the process is usually to have them.
That's what we've been doing.
I would say if we do that with others, it would be only fair to keep that standard of
Yeah.
just having a conversation.
Yeah, and basically, the people have been coming in and telling us, here's how they corrected the issue. But it's an acknowledgement that there's an issue. There's an acknowledgement that they've worked hard to correct it.
That makes sense. I'd
So-
want to adhere to that because it's only fair if we're asking that of others.
It's consistency.
Yeah,
sake.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'd personally be willing to let Ramunto's go just
Yeah.
because it's only, this time, only
Yeah.
a paperwork thing.
Yeah.
I do have a sort of unrelated question, but I'm not sure. Hillary's not here, so.
You can ask and I'll answer it if I can. If it's urgent enough before you take action, we can actually contact them.
It's not at all. I'm just curious about the hermit thrush second class, because they are doing some sort of transition where they're serving some food, and they're. I guess I'm confused that they're second class if they're doing full pours at all.
I'll check on that, and we'll get you an email response so that you'll all know the answer.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Anything else?
Not for
Does
me.
anyone in the public have any questions about our annual liquor license renewal process? Seeing none. Would anyone like to make a motion? And
So,
whatever.
I'm sorry, what did we decide to do on bringing people back?
That's what we're going to talk about right now. I'm going to clarify right now. If what we've talked about doing, whoever makes the motion, we're approving the liquor licenses except for McNeil's, who's coming back at a different time, Cooper's Co-op on the Avenue because they're not ready, and we're going to bring the Country Club back.
Did you say Cooper's go up?
Cooper's Co-op on Cooper's Coop.
Coop, I think.
On
Cooper's
the,
Coop.
Yeah.
on the Avenue, because that's a premature application for a thing. But we want to bring Ramunto's back. Not Ramunto's, I'm sorry.
Country Club.
Country Club.
Okay. I can make the motion.
Right.
I'd like them to make the motion to approve all applications for liquor license renewals for 2019, except McNeil's Brewery, Cooper's Coop, and the Country Club, all of which will be coming back, whose application will be presented to the Select Board separately at a later date, subject to, 1, each applicant's submittal to the town clerk of all the required paperwork, and 2, the final approval of the state's Department of Liquor Control.
Makes sense. So we have a motion to approve all the applications for liquor licenses except the ones that were exempted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners?
I move to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
All those in favor of adjourning as liquor commissioners, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Next up is new business, and we're sort of following in this topic. We have an update on a statewide opioid planning grant, and we're going to have Cassandra's coming back along with Chad Simmons.
We're changing it up a little for you guys.
And other people.
Thank you all.
Wait, what did you do with your baby?
Yeah, just, he's fine.
Oh, I couldn't see it.
I told him where the emergency exit was.
Shit like that.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Chad, and Cassandra is joining us from the audience. Hold on, baby. I'll let everyone introduce themselves first.
My name's Jedediah Pop. I'm a caseworker at HCRS.
My name's Ella Lauren Thompson. I work at the Turning Point in Windham County in peer recovery as a job title that will mean nothing to you, so I won't bother you with this.
So we are all members of COSU, the Windham County Consortium on Substance Use. And we're going to just share a few minutes of what we're up to, what we plan on doing over the next several months, and why our work is important. We'll be doing that just by talking about a little bit of our personal experiences as well as some of the nitty-gritty work that we do. So my family and I live in Brattleboro, and this past August, I had to explain to my 3-year-old daughter what a used hypodermic needle was, and that we found in our yard. And of course, as a parent, I was furious. I was frustrated. I was angry. But believe me when I say that the most painful thing, the most hurtful thing, was that the realization that my neighbors, folks in our community, were suffering, were dealing with addiction and not knowing where to go. And oftentimes this is happening 100 feet behind our house, between a cell phone tower and a wood shop. So I felt helpless. And I think many of us in this community do. So I serve as the project coordinator for the Windham County Consortium on Substance Use. We're a multi-sector, a multi-agency coalition serving all of Windham County. And our group is working across prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery to address the opioid epidemic facing our communities. The group is currently mapping existing programs and services that are in place here in Windham County, and we're also beginning a several-month-long process to better understand what we're doing, what we could be doing better, and how we could be better serving folks in our community. Additionally, and I'm glad it was brought up earlier in the evening, the group is considering the impacts of stigma and discrimination and how we talk about substance use disorder and our families and our communities and the systems that perpetuate that discrimination. So last week, the Vermont Department of Health released a preliminary report on 2018 opioid-related deaths, and it showed a statistically significant increase in opioid-related deaths in Windham County. That number of deaths went from 13 to 21 and compared to 2017. And this report reflects that many of our community have experienced over the past number of years. So Brattleboro and Windham County, we have a number of assets at our disposal. A lot of amazing programs, Project CARE here in Brattleboro, a lot of the programs for ADJOURNMENT, the Retreat, the Hub and Spoke programs, Turning Point, and we have amazing social service programs serving folks, but we're still not getting it right yet. So that is our work, is to figure out how we can be doing that. So the group is putting together a multi-month process, and at the end we're going to be putting together from all of the stories and the input from the community what we should be doing better and what we can be doing better. So now I've asked Jed and Ella to just share a little bit about their experience and how it relates to the Windham County Consortium and how we intend to move forward to collect people's stories and to improve what we do better, what we can do better here in Windham County.
Oh, thanks. Jed noticed earlier that some of our preliminary ideas about what we were going to talk about tonight are had some common themes. I've been working at the Turning Point for 2 years now in a position called a Pathway Guide, which is a position in part of a program called the Pathways to Recovery program that's now funded by ADAP, the State Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention. Anyways, guys, I really should know what that acronym stands for by now. I do, but I don't. I've been doing this work for 2 years, but I'm a person in recovery from opioid addiction for about 6 now, which means I've been substance free for the last 4 or so. And my understanding of my recovery, understanding recovery has been a process that has taken place exclusively in Brattleboro, Vermont for me. When I came to this area 6 years ago, it was because I knew that I needed to get away from the people, places, and things that were associated with my active addiction. And I got a really, really lucky here in town. I had the community, actually, in answering and thinking about some of Chad's questions earlier today, I realized that my recovery wouldn't have been able to happen without a couple key factors in this community, and one of them was an employer that allowed me to take breaks to go to treatment, and then made sure that I knew I had a job to come back to. And Richard French, I want to give a little shout out to Richard French from the works here in Brattleboro, right? Okay, cool. Lovely man. And I had for myself, I had landlords that rented apartments to me, even though I couldn't pay anyone to say anything nice about me for a little while. It allowed me to get my credibility back. Windham County has been, and Brattleboro in particular, has been really good to me. But my experience, and one of the things that Chad wanted us to kind of elaborate on is how my experience in my own personal recovery informs kind of the work that I do as a pathway guide. And the pathway guide program was created specifically in response to the opioid epidemic. It was created because we know that there's one thing, research has shown like long-term impact of creating successful long-term recovery. Medication-assisted treatment, things like the Suboxone maintenance, methadone maintenance, Vivitrol, things that the hub and spoke system here in town and across the state do are like instrumental in giving people the chance to change other things in their lives that may be standing in the way of them achieving long-term recovery. For myself, using was a rational response to a life that was miserable and felt out of control for me. There were things in my life that were broken past the point of repair that I was certain were never ever going to be better again. I didn't know how to fix, feeling like I was never going to have a job that was going to be meaningful and that I was going to be excited to go to work. I didn't know how I was ever going to be able to have a home that I was ever going to be proud of again or be part of a community ever again. But I did know how to solve one thing. I knew how to make myself feel better for about 20 minutes. That was a problem that was manageable, and I could take care of that. So I've had the opportunity here in Brattleboro to not only be a part of the hub and spoke system, where I've been a patient at the methadone clinic here in town for 6 years. I've been tapering off. And it's been the platform that enabled me to go beyond just learning how to not use a substance. It enabled me to figure out how am I going to figure out how to be happy when I wake up in the morning and excited about the day that lies ahead of me, and how do I figure out how to be proud of myself when I go to bed at night. And it goes beyond just a doctor's appointment or just taking a certain medication. As I'm sure, like you folks in this room, you're doing something that's not specifically required of you. This doesn't have to do with your survival, but it's something I imagine that makes you feel better about yourselves after you leave here. There's something really meaningful to that. And so I got really lucky. I got offered this job a couple of years ago, and it's the thing that's kind of blown open the doors for me. And I've gotten to work with a lot of the partners that are participating in the COSU work and that really are in this community, realizing that they're invested in recovery. They're invested in how our neighbors are doing, how the people living behind us are doing. So I'm a little new to this
We're
work.
still recruiting.
Yeah. It's going well though. It's a very appealing package, child care included.
One thing I will say, I just want to add one thing to Ella's point, is one of the things that we're doing are looking at things that are working well and how we can be doing them more. So Ella facilitates recovering on it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I thought you could maybe
so
just say
much.
that for a minute and then we can.
Thank you so much. I have, as you may have noticed, a 14-month-old, and I had been in recovery, but when he was born, I'd been in recovery for a number of years, but and I was plugged in. I had more supports, and I was better, less vulnerable than I'd ever been at any other time in my life and in my recovery. But I had a really hard time postpartum. I just a really hard time. A couple things were difficult, and I felt more vulnerable and weaker in my recovery than I had at any other time in the last 5 years. And I went to some of the wonderful support groups that we have for moms here in this town, and I went and I just kind of sat there and cried, sometimes visibly, sometimes not. I went just a couple times and just sat there and felt so alone and alienated from these women, because I wanted to stand up and say, I feel weak and vulnerable, and I'm a person in recovery, and I'm struggling right now. Not only am I a mom, but I'm a person in recovery, and I'm having a really hard time. And what ended up being kind of my safe place was the home of another woman who'd given birth a number of weeks earlier, who was also in recovery and also had gone through a really challenging time postpartum. And she just sat there and listened to me, and I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with me, like I was broken, like I was some sort of failure of any kind. I was just a mom and a woman and a person in recovery. And so that was kind of the genesis for creating a group called Recovery Mamas that we have at the Turning Point here in town on Thursdays from 11 to 12. We partnered up with Winston Prouty's Children's Integrated Services, and they gave us some funding so that we can provide snacks so mamas don't have to figure out what to do for lunch for their kiddos when they bring them. Moms with kids of any age are welcome, and it's just that's one area that I knew in my own personal experience. To support folks in recovery or currently struggling with substance use disorder, having a space where they can be around a community of people with similar experiences and find strength and encouragement has really been pretty amazing. So I'm glad you reminded me to highlight that. So
Sure.
yeah.
And I thought I'd give Jed a few minutes too, and I know we have a short amount of time.
Sorry. That's a theme for me.
How much time do we have? What's my limit?
Get a few minutes.
So I'll just touch on a couple points. Try not to double up on some of the stuff Ella was talking about, but back in 2008, my life was very dark period. I won't go into any detail. I remember waking up one morning on the bathroom floor of I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but my place of employment. And I had about 5 EMT workers over me, a couple of police officers. They seemed very irritated with me at that point. They thought I was going to throw up on them. But later on that day, I found out that I had overdosed in the bathroom. And I went to jail for 30 days because I violated my probation. When I got back, I had no idea what to do. I had no idea where to turn to, who to ask for help. I didn't even want to ask for help, to be honest with you. And I don't think I ever did ask for help in that time from 2008 to 2012. But it was very difficult. And when I finally did get to a point when I said enough is enough, I had to leave Bennington and I came over here to Brattleboro. And within about a 2-year period from 2012 to 2014, I had to piece together my recovery. And I was homeless. I was living in front of Sleepy's mattress place on the cold, wet concrete. And that's where I slept every night. And each day I'd get up, I'd go to Habit Opco methadone clinic. I would go to the retreat. I'd find these bits and pieces that I could add to my recovery. And, 2 things there. The positive is that the town has a lot to offer. But the negative was that was a lot of stress at that point in my life to get connected with those services. I think with the work that I do now, I being a caseworker at a mental health agency, connected with the Turning Point on a couple boards, involved with Project Care. I think that from when I go out into the community is the best. I feel so good about myself when I go out into the community and I actually talk with people and I approach people as if their life is valuable. And to me, their life is valuable. It doesn't matter if a person is asking for money on the sidewalk. It doesn't matter if a person is in recovery or coming out from the retreat or shopping. I treat every person like a human being. And that's one thing that I really took out from my past experiences is that, that empathy and that care for other people. And I really see how that impacts that person because it is very, very, I think we're getting better, but it's rare that they actually experience that from other community members. I'm able to talk to them about what are the other things going on in their life when people just pass judgment. So jump into COSU real quick. I'm on the advisory board for COSU, and I have to tell you, it's really a beautiful thing, and I use that word very, very rarely, but more and more now that I come to think about it in my life now. It's a beautiful thing to see all of these agencies coming to work together for one goal. I know treatment teams at my agency, it's not a pretty sight sometimes. So whenever I see agencies getting together and working together, it's really awesome. So essentially what we're doing is we're kind of tearing down these silos that we've created over these past 30, 40 years, and we're forming connections. And, for me, what that does, ultimately, what it does is it creates a sense of hope for me. And hope is essential in what we're facing, what we're up against, and in somebody's recovery, whether it be a mother that is recovering from a son or daughter that just died of an overdose, or whether it's somebody that's living with substance use. We're recovering as a community. And I was very happy to come here and speak today because I've never seen this process before. And it's really, really difficult to get across my message in 5 minutes. But I would really like to see, more investment into this as Chad and the whole group gets the word out on what we're trying to do. It's really important, and I hope at the end, I know at the end of this, at the end of the grant, we can have this plan to move forward, because there's a lot of great qualities in this community, in this county. We need to bring some of those resources to the outskirts of the county, in the corners, and bring everybody together. I think.
Yep.
I can talk longer if you want me to.
So this is a one-year grant. As I said, we're moving into the assessment phase. So our pitch essentially tonight to folks at home and to the select board of the town is to reach out and participate in that process. Two questions, and then we'll wrap up, that are driving us, or what should we know and what should we be doing? So over the next several weeks, I encourage folks to reach out to us. My name again is Chad Simmons. I'm at 802-591-2419 or csimmons@hcrs.org. And we really appreciate this time tonight to speak. Do you all have any questions?
Yeah, I actually was talking to Tim before the meeting, and I'm like, I'm not going to mention something, but now I'm going to mention it because you guys just got me.
Good.
I just want to say that I really appreciate what you all just said and sharing your stories, and it's to be commended. I think it's wonderful. I happen to live 2 doors down to one of the top 3 drug houses in the town of Brattleboro, and every day we watch people going in, and I want to stop the people and say, please, don't do drugs. For me, I think it would be great, and I don't know if this is what you folks plan to do, but it's to educate the rest of us on how we can help somebody, who's going through this. Because I think in our town, unfortunately, there is a lot of selling going on, and Chad told his story, and I think we all have our stories of what we see. And for me, I get really agitated that the people that are selling these drugs get away with it. I'm going to say that right now, it's really aggravating, and that they're, I see them as taking advantage of other human beings. And so if there's a way to sort of educate other people on what you do to help the people that are in this situation. I don't want to help the drug dealers. I want them to go away. But it's helping the people that are caught up in this. And I've had multiple conversations with the Brattleboro Police Department, and they say what happens is, if somebody gets arrested for using, and then they're put back in their circle of friends. And that's what I thought what you were saying was, both of you were saying, you sort of had to start over and get a new circle of friends. So to me, it's educating people like me, or on what we can do besides trying to crack down on the bad people. How do you help the people that need the help?
Yeah.
So
I wish we had here's the pamphlet that we've for just this occasion.
Right.
Here, one handy dandy 8x11 piece of paper. There you go.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting an answer now, but it's very curious because we watch people every single day go to purchase drugs at this house, and you want to say please, but I know it's beyond me saying please don't, because it's not that simple, but
Yeah. Well, we are excited about and thrilled to be participating in this. There will be no one solution and one easy way for communities to address it. It's going to be complicated. We're going to have to grapple with a lot of challenging decisions as a community, and that's what we hope to facilitate over the next few months.
thank you.
I'd like to say thank you so much to Jed and Ella for your stories. I mean, and congratulations, because you're doing great work. And I'm sure it's a battle every day on many levels. But it's really important for everyone to hear these stories, I think. And I just wanted to sort of underline Ella's, a couple things you said, that you had a supportive employer and a supportive landlord.
Yeah.
And I think we need to hold all of ourselves, if we're employers, if we're landlords, hold our community accountable to be supportive to our community members like you guys. We are dealing with several unsupportive landlords right now, and possibly a few unsupportive employers. And I'm sure you know of some of them, and you hear all the stories. So I want to know, we're going to try to help in any way we can. We have some limitations in how we can help, but we can always be a sounding board and a connective tissue to joining some great people who are doing great work like yourselves together, I think. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that sometimes people use this phrase, these people, people who are suffering from addiction deserve our help. And I'd like to say that you have a right to our help. Not that you deserve it. You certainly do deserve it. But I'd like to flip the dialogue a little bit and talk about people have a right to recovery. That's all I want to say.
Well, I also want to chime in and thank you, because as I'm stepping off of the select board, my other world includes really helping to be a funnel for voices and some of the other work that I do. And part of what I've been learning is that we're actually helping ourselves, because the ways that people fall into addiction may start with a broken back and a prescription, and then off they go down that slippery slope. So again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, public, yeah.
I just wanted to say people who are selling drugs on the street are not inherently bad people, or selling drugs out of their home are not inherently bad people. And the solution is pretty simple, that we need universal health care, whether that's through Medicaid more realistically, because we can't depend on the government, the federal government, for providing Medicare. And is there, with the addiction focus, is there any plans for a hoarding intervention committee?
Can you elaborate on that?
Because hoarding is an addiction pattern, is there any committee that would be designated towards case managing that?
That has not been brought up in our work yet. We are, honestly, we're looking at a fairly wide range of things, but that has not come up in our work yet.
Would you commit to addressing that in your work?
I think, so I can speak for myself. I know that for my own experience and for at the Turning Point, which is a peer recovery center, which means it's not a clinical setting. You don't need insurance to get the okay to come there. It's not doctors, it's not nurses, there's no blood work, no drug tests, no case notes. It's just a space where there's a beating heart. I like to think of it as a beating heart of people who are figuring out how to live their lives without drugs and alcohol in it. And some people are doing it in all sorts of different ways. And I know for myself, addictive behaviors, I didn't limit my addictive tendencies to just like chemical substances. I had some unhealthy patterns around money and unhealthy patterns around people, and that's really easy to do for people who don't consider themselves in recovery. It's like, haha, well, my mom just bought 27 pairs of shoes in one go, so that doesn't seem like a great idea. But I think so. I can't say, it doesn't sound like. I think the space that's being created and the attention that's being given to helping people make sure that they are taking care of mind, body, and soul by which are, in my personal belief, the thing that gives a space and feeds addiction and substance use disorder in all its many forms. I think will trickle into impacting hoarding. I actually have a sister that's a real serious, actually, and my dad too, real problem for. And I think I'm not sure if it's going to be specifically written in there, but I imagine a lot of the work that we are doing is going to give rise to a healthier space and the ability to face some of those addictive tendencies head on and take a look at them and hopefully figure out a plan of what to do when.
Having that specifically written down into the grant would be very helpful to be inclusive towards people that need hoarding and case management.
Types of addiction. Okay. Thank you. That's good information.
Yeah. Great. Any more public comment? Ron.
Hi. All very interesting and hopeful. As you're in this assessment phase, I find myself recently thinking a lot about the bigger picture of substance abuse in the country, in the world, and everything, and particularly how little success we've had addressing it through criminal justice system. And I'd be interested in hearing at some point, as you're putting your material forward, what your thoughts on that are and ways that may have been used effectively in other places to address the underlying issues and the associated issues of crime and
it's a great
social
question.
displacement.
Yeah, so the paperwork that we actually sent to the select board didn't include this, but we've since added it because it has been such a common theme throughout our preliminary research, is addressing justice. And so looking at the programs that exist right now, how we treat substance use disorder currently, and looking at restorative models. And so we actually have a committee that's focusing on justice-related issues.
I'll look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any more public comment? Daniel. And I want to remind everybody to introduce yourselves for the viewers.
Thanks. I'm Daniel Quipp. I live here in Brattleboro. I'm running for the select board. So I figured I should come. But I also knew that you were coming, and I was really curious to hear what you all would have to say, and I appreciate hearing your stories. I've been in recovery in Brattleboro for the last, 4 years. I got sober in New York City, which is almost like the polar opposite of the Brattleboro recovery community in some ways, but actually there's a lot of really great resources for recovery in Brattleboro, especially given the size of our town. And I think one of the things that makes recovery in Brattleboro really special is that it is a very small place, and you can move here from some other part of the world and find a community that really cares for you, and that community of care is part of what holds people up. And I think the other thing that holds people up and keeps them in recovery is funding organizations that do this work. So I suppose when I was listening to you all talk, I was waiting for the question so what can the town of Brattleboro do, capital T town? And our Human Services Review Committee, reviews applications for funding from organizations like HCRS, like Turning Point, like the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont, and other organizations that are doing really, really important work. And I just kind of want to flag up, not so much for the folks that are sitting here tonight, but for the folks that are going to be at representative town meeting, that when we're voting on whether or not to appropriate that money for those organizations, that we're actually talking about really small dollar amounts, and we could do, I presume you all could do a lot more with a significantly increased contribution. And I hope that when we're talking at town meeting this year, we'll remember the stories that we heard tonight, and we'll remember the actual human impact of the programs and services like Turning Point, like HCRS. And we'll maybe think about whether or not, as a town, we want to commit to putting more resources, and when I say resources, I mean time and money, and maybe power as well, behind those things, and really standing with people that are trying to stay clean and sober in Windham County. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? Seeing none, thank you folks so much.
Thank
you very much.
Good job. Next up, we have our monthly financial report with John O'Connor.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, John.
So the January financial report is included in your packet. And as of the end of January, we are 58.3% of the way through the fiscal year. And the general fund expenditures stood at 61.4%. But included in those expenditures are annual payments for insurance, human services, lease payments, and note payments. And if we prorate those annual payments, the percent of budget would be 56.3% expended, so under the target. The utilities fund stood at 57.1%. Parking stood at 54.9%. So both were under the target of 58.3. And furthermore, included in the utilities fund was a $105,000 encumbrance for sludge removal and bond interest of $357,503. And if we prorate those, it gets the utility fund budget down to 54.0%. Solid waste, both the revenues and expenditures stood at 53.9%. And as I say every month when I report, in this case, January refuse bag revenue, curbside collection costs, and tipping fees weren't recorded until February. So basically, we're looking at expenditures and revenues through December in the January report. So the loan report shows that we had $4,378,543 in outstanding loans. 2 loans had payments that were overdue, and 2 loans are in default but fully reserved. And program income report shows that we had $534,227 in available funds for additional grants and loans as of the end of January. And early in February, we received a loan payment from GS Precision. They paid off their loan, and that was just under $175,000. So that's going to add to that $534,000 figure. And then there are a couple of commitments that are not reflected in the January report. One of them is the action you took on groundworks to commit $50,000 to groundworks. And the other is the set $25,000 for SEVIDS, which is going to town meeting. So those 2 commitments potentially could bring down the balance a little bit. And then finally, the grant report shows that we have 43 active grants that we're managing and 6 grants that are currently in the application process, and there's a variety of information on each of those grants. So that's what I have for you tonight. If you have any questions, I'll certainly try to answer them. And if not, that's the financial report for January.
Thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't.
I have a question, but it's probably more for Patrick, because looking at this reminded me, and I apologize if I should know the answer to this and I don't. I'm thinking about the parking. Have the new lights gone in the transportation center yet?
No.
Okay.
They have not.
When is that happening?
We're working on that now in terms of putting together the RFP.
Okay.
So.
Because I just realized there was nothing in there in our bucket about that.
Yeah. We're working on both that and the replacement of the stairs right now. We're finishing up the smart meters, transitioning towards the other capital projects.
Okay, so like in the summer or something? I just get asked all the time.
Sure, I would hope before then.
Oh, okay.
Do you get asked?
I do.
About the lights specifically, or?
Yeah, about the transportation center, and people are always asking. So it's just nice I can give them an answer. Thank you.
We're doing the administrative preparation for that work right now. So.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, I think you have a question.
Yeah.
You might have
I have to tell people, I don't have my glasses, so I can't
Yeah,
see a
so
thing.
she has to-
So, yes, come on. I'm not ignoring people on purpose.
I know you're busy multitasking. So I'm Ricky Rosati. I'm running for District 2 representative and also as a write-in for the Select Board. And I hear people asking all the time if any of that money is being spent on fixing the bathrooms because they are constantly the sinks and toilets are broken, and if part of that renovation is going to adhere to, apparently I was told, and I haven't double checked this, that is there a statewide gender neutral policy now for all bathrooms? Is that really true? Did that happen?
So
I see head nods.
bathrooms that are that accommodate just one person at a time are all to be gender neutral under
Okay.
state law.
All right.
Those that accommodate multiple people at one time can still be identified for one gender or another.
Okay.
Which particular location are you concerned about the condition of the bathroom?
The parking garage bathroom. That's what was the segue.
Okay, thank you.
I asked a question. I'm waiting for a
Is
response.
Is anything happening to the parking garage bathrooms?
As far as I know, they're in good working order.
They're not, and they haven't been.
But I'd be happy to take a look at them and see if there's something that needs to be taken care of.
Good. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions about John O'Connor's finance report? Seeing none. Thank you, John.
All right, Kate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate your coming to our meeting. Next up is the first reading of the ordinance to the amendment to the plastic bag ordinance. We talked about this 2 meetings ago, a month ago. It was an issue that Zephyr Design had with the plastic bags that they have to use for their artwork. We talked to John Clements from Zephyr. He came to the meeting, explained what the issue was. We asked the town to move forward in putting together an ordinance. And I'm happy to read it. We're not going to be voting on this tonight. But what will happen is in Article 3 of Section 4 of Chapter 7, if I have it right.
You do?
What's going to happen is it will read, thin film plastic bags used to contain, and these are the new words, framed art and art supplies, dry cleaning, newspapers, produce, meat, bulk foods, wet items, and other similar merchandise typically manufactured as thin, single-use bags without handles. Those are things that are going to be exempted. And the words framed art supplies are going to be added to dry cleaning, newspapers, produce, milk, meat, bulk foods, wet items, and other similar merchandise, if that makes sense to everybody.
So what's underlined is
Right.
the only thing
Right.
that's changing.
The only thing that's changing is under the exemptions for the plastic bag, framed art and art supplies.
That makes sense. That makes me happy.
That makes sense. Does anyone in the public have any questions about this? Yes.
So before I came to this meeting, I went to Dottie's, and they are the first place in town I've seen start using a biodegradable plastic bag. And although they're kind of thin, they're good for certain items compared to, they also have paper bags and boxes for more heavier items. And I would like to see an extension of the policy to include wrapping for everything, really, especially food items, though, because plastic wrapping is so toxic to the environment and leaching into the food. So biodegradable plastics for that is everything to be. I'm very optimistic about that. Looking forward to that.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments? This is our, oh, yes. I'm sorry.
My name's Evan Quincy. I was just curious if Zephyr had actually faced any consequences or if it had been doing something else in place of these bags to cover frame artwork. Just sort of what the situation was.
Yeah, we'll let either the town manager or assistant town manager answer the question.
So they had applied for a waiver, an individual store waiver to be allowed to use the bags that they protect the artwork and the art supplies with. And staff actually rejected that request, at which point they asked if they could appear before the select board to have the matter heard for what's happened here tonight, the process that we're in now, which is the potential that instead of having a single store exemption, there would actually be an exemption for that type of use. So we postponed any enforcement action while we were bringing the matter before the select board. On January 22nd, the select board was sympathetic to the concern and directed staff to prepare this ordinance that's before the board tonight. It'll be, having been read for the first time tonight, it'll be read again 2 weeks from tonight on March 5th. And there'll be a public hearing that night and the final adoption of this. And so
If we choose to adopt it.
if you do choose to adopt it. So, we're on a path that the select board has asked for. If they decide to continue on that path through the conclusion of it, there won't be any enforcement action against Zephyrs.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, Daniel.
I wasn't here for the original decision to move forward with this. Did we see examples of the kind of bags that they are feeling like they have to use? Did they bring those in?
We didn't actually see it, but he went into detail describing it.
I know, because I just recently purchased something, and I'll be honest, I would not have went and picked up my framing if I did not have a plastic bag or covering and I purchase art supplies occasionally, so it's important to have something to carry it. Otherwise, it does prevent me, if it's raining or snowing or whatever, it does prevent me. And it was a vintage photo that I took to them to get framed, and it was kind of thick, protective, and they wrap it. And I did use that to rewrap that same gift, and so that's what it looks like.
And it's a 2 mil bag that they're using. And of
Oh, I
course,
forgot the whole mill thing.
Yeah.
What did we end up with?
2 mil bag. And
2.25 mils.
Yeah, the 2.25 mil is our
Yeah.
threshold. He uses a 2 mil bag, no points. I have seen them too, because I went into his store and he explained the whole thing to me in there. And if you have something that's like a watercolor and it gets even a drop of water on it, a $10,000 piece of artwork is no more.
Yep.
So I'm sure if you want to go in and he can show them to you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've used Zephyrs for
Yeah.
framing and that kind of thing myself, and I believe in the principle of protecting the thing that you've just. I know framing's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
No.
But they do a good job, and custom too. I guess, I remember when we had the original kind of process to craft the ordinance, we saw examples of bags from Sam's. We also saw examples of, thinner bags that were deemed less acceptable. And, and I know that there's going to be another public hearing, so maybe if Zephyr could bring in some examples of what they're talking about so that folks in the public can get a clearer view of what's up for debate. I mean, it seems to me maybe, we're okay with this, this seems all right, but, I know that people really put a lot of work into, creating that ordinance, and I'm sure that Zephyr has a good reason, and, just like to see all the kind of pieces in one place at the hearing so that folks can weigh in on it.
That's simple.
If I could just comment a little bit. I think also, you weren't here, so I'll just fill you in. At that meeting, we felt like it was easier to retain the spirit of the original ordinance by not granting waiver after waiver. That would undermine it ultimately, I think, and that this was a very specialized purpose, and there are already very specialized purposes for plastic that are are excluded from the ordinance. So we thought that was a less disruptive way to go about it and friendly to our community.
Franz Reitzman, and like Daniel, I'm running for the Select Board too. And it turns out that running for the Select Board is an excellent way to discover how little you understand the policies of the town and their implications. So when I saw this on the agenda for tonight, I just thought, well, what do I know about recycling in Brattleboro? And so I started, doing a little web search and found a few things that were new to me. One of which is that plastic bags actually can be recycled fairly easily for at least some purposes. So it sort of started me thinking, well, why do we single them out as a specific class of recyclable or non-recyclable or forbidden item, etc.? Which made me think, well, but how about recycling in general? We're mixing everything together now, whereas we used to separate things out. And from what I see, that's really a bad way to do recycling. It detracts from the resale value of what the material is, causes a lot of problems down the road. Now, I understand that it's a lot easier for me to put my stuff out in one bin, but raised for me just questions about how effective is our recycling program at this point? Why couldn't it include plastic bags if they're recyclable as part of the mix? And I don't know, where's all this heading long term? I mean, recycling has just taken a nosedive, it seems, over the past few years. Is there anything that we can do or that's been talked about thus far that would sort of make things better at the local level?
I think that's a question for another meeting.
Yeah, I don't need an answer right now, but
I agree with you.
When I heard Daniel talk about this upcoming, whatever it is, public hearing, I thought maybe, some of that could be included in there.
I agree with you, Kate. It's another meeting.
Does anyone else have any comments? All right, so we'll do the first public hearing will be 2 weeks.
Final
public hearing, March 5th. Tuesday, March 5th, this will be on the agenda again.
Election day.
Yes.
Correct.
All right, now we're going to review the status of our goals. As people may or may not know, at the beginning of each year, which for us is March, we set our goals and then we review them every quarter. And we have a big list of goals and some things. I don't know if the town manager wants to help us go through the goals.
What I'd like to do, if this is all right with the board, is summarize things that have changed since last time, since we go through these in some detail each quarter. So I'll speak to those things that have been updated. Under financial matters, there's a description there of work that the town has been doing together with the League of Cities and Towns, and what we've added to it is the League's proposed major legislative initiative to create a limited self-governance pilot program for Vermont municipalities, and that the Brattleboro Select Board has taken the lead statewide in expressing municipal support for this initiative. We saw that, as Tim Wessel described earlier, we saw that last week in the local government day up at the legislature. A lot of attention being paid to this, and it's now actually a bill in both houses. They have a companion bill in the House and the Senate. It'll be considered starting tomorrow in the Senate, and then we hope later in the session move over to the House and ultimately get adopted. The second one that's been updated is we had a goal that during the FY20 budget process we would create a realistic and financially sustainable capital improvement plan. We have achieved this goal with regard to vehicles and equipment, creating a 25-year plan. As noted during the budget process, that's not chiseled in stone. It's a plan. It's meant to be a document that's alive that we review every year, update as needed. But we do now have a roadmap that shows us a way in which we can, in a relatively steady amount of funding, avoid the peaks and valleys that have been typical in the capital equipment replacement, and replace the equipment as it is expected to wear out. Some pieces are shorter periods of time, some pieces are longer than 10 years life, but it's a 25-year plan that shows all of those different pieces of equipment and their various replacement cycles. We made some progress towards this goal with regard to infrastructure projects. It's not nearly as complete as the work that we've done around vehicles and equipment, but we have made progress this year and we'll do more next year. And the final item under financial matters that has an update is consider the 1% local option sales tax, which at the time of your last review was an incomplete item, something you intended to do. And during this final quarter of 2018, the Select Board added this matter to the warning for consideration at representative town meeting. So you did consider that and did act upon it. Under energy efficiency and sustainability, the sustainability officer position, the town staff did not include that as a recommendation in the FY20 budget, but there were people from the community who came forward and recommended that the board include it in the budget. And the outcome of that was in between, which was that staff was directed to work with the residents to better define the scope of this potential position so that the Select Board can further consider the matter during the summer of 2019 and may direct staff to include the position in the proposed FY21 budget next year. And an item regarding supporting the work that's already being done by community organizations regarding housing and economic and community development. These themes were present in many of the Select Board's discussions and actions throughout the year. On November 20th, the Select Board specifically discussed housing in Brattleboro. The Select Board plans to consider bringing together community experts to assist in a more detailed review during 2019. The rest of the document contains quite a lot of information as well about the work that was going on throughout the year, but doesn't include any changes from the prior reports.
I have a change, but I can submit it. It's all the dates for the actual, and I don't know, I know there's only so much space, but I can just send it in an email to be included, because I think it should be documented. It's all of the forms, about 6 to 7 forms for the Compassion Committee that are starting March 13th at the library, and those are actually happening in our community as an actionable way to explore what it means to be a compassionate town. So I think it's worth noting.
Anything else? Tim, anything?
I don't know. I feel like, how do I put this without making it sound like we're patting ourselves on the back? But I think we did pretty well with our goals, and we are continuing to address the things we haven't, completely figured out. I just wanted to point that out, that I think it represents some real progress about some real things. I have some ideas for the next set of goals, but I think we should stick to this review of our previous
current
set.
goals.
Right. And then with our new select board, we'll be working on the new goals, right? Thank you for that suggestion. It's
Of course, you're
good
welcome.
addition.
I'll send an email.
Anybody have any comments about the select board goals that we just reviewed? Seeing none, we're ready to adjourn. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries, we adjourn. And please don't forget to vote on March 5th. Too late to remind
Oh,
people.
yeah, absolutely.
I guess over here.
There you go. Thank you.